I think soon after, 3 weeks later, we had a meeting.
The very first meeting all together, and in Berlin. So they came over and from London at this time, and we started to talk, and I think we had 3 topics. We prepared three proposals, and right in this meeting they jumped into this idea. So it was really 3 weeks after the first contact that we said, let's follow this idea.
Yeah. Then basically we had the idea. This does not mean that we had a contract signed. This meant there was interest on the topic, and then of course if you work on this kind of investigative true crime genre, where you need people from terrorist organizations, Secret Service members, of very complicated research. The question is, where does the series start? Where does it end? What's the cliffhanger? What were the main characters? And and it's clear that by answering these questions, production's already half done, because that's the big question: what's your access? What can you do? So yeah, so I think the next part is kind of first research, finding characters, writing on the script. We involved people from the fiction world early on, to find the right setup for the series, and then I think more or less by the end of the year, something like September, we had a well-developed proposal, including calculation and all the paperwork in place, and then I think the technical part of negotiating the budget took quite a while, and I think it was green-lighted something like March or April of last year, 2019.
So we had, in the end, 1 year for the production. So,
yeah.
Like how did you decide to integrate some fictional elements in this documentary series? I know that you as a company have a long experience in working with these mixed genre storytelling mode. How did you decide in this project to also go for this approach and combining documentary and fictional elements in the series?
I think overall we're living in very interesting times in terms of non-fiction and fiction world, because finally things are coming together, and we even don't like too much to talk about the documentary series. It's just as we feel it, it's a entertaining, substantial, important project, and people who are not used to watch documentary series, they're usually surprised. They say, "Oh, but it's not boring." Because there's still this notion of documentary and black and white material, and in this project, bring together the best of both worlds. So using the true story, it's a very, very heavy story with a political substance, but combining it with all the elements from the fiction world, and the storytelling, the cliffhanger, the use of music, and of course the use of all kind of visual elements you have is the great fun, and is I think what's really interesting about this genre in general. And we pitched the project right from the beginning with the fictional elements, because the whole concept of the series is we tell different theories of who might be behind the murder of Rohwedder. And in order to make that clear and to illustrate that, we said we have to go straight into this world. So we have terrorists, we have Stasi members with very clear different settings, and we need to control that. And that was the reason for fiction, but it was in our heads from the very beginning.
As you're saying, we're using these elements since more than 10, 15 years. This mix of using fiction in documentary or documentary in fiction. The ground is always, it's a true story, and with this true story, we want to reach a bigger audience, and with these elements, you could make it, more emotional, for example, and as of course we feel. I think we are documentary people, so in the end, so we are not fiction people. We always have to work with what we could get, what kind of material we could get, what kind of access you could get, And of course, there's no material of the sniper shoot, you know, from Wolverine, for example. There's no material of the Red Army fraction when they did, you know, killed the first people. So you have to find tools to make it stronger and to tense a story. And of course, for that, you could use fiction elements.
And I mean, in general, talking about the genre, true crime genre, which is, most important examples coming from the US, but you have a very different situation there because basically you have all the materials in courtroom drama. Everything is filmed there and released. When it comes down to Germany, there's nothing. You won't find a single image, from a courtroom, from any of the big court cases. And
even to get the files, you know, we had lawyers behind us and tried to open up the files of the Wohlwetter case. And it's impossible because this is not a kind of cold case. This case is still going on. It's not solved until today, but you don't get any access to the files. So it's very, very difficult in Germany to make true crime stories in a very tense way.
Yeah. So even getting pictures for it's a different culture, different way of dealing with it culturally. Maybe I even prefer it in terms of in general. I said, but from a professional point of view, it makes it very difficult to have a compelling true crime series at all. And this was, I think, it's in general, it's a big question for us German European producers. How can you take advantage of the genre, which it makes it fun to watch and interesting. It opens it up, and but still to fill it with a political topic. And we have to find different ways than our US colleagues because we don't have the materials. And in this case,
but I think also we tick different here in Europe. So our stories. So I would say, if a true crime series, poor true crime series, we wouldn't be interested in to tell. I don't give 1, 2, 3 years of my life for true crime stories with rape, kids, whatever, all the stories. I think in Europe we are more interested in politics and more interested really to understand the world and also to add something to the world. So and I think this was in this case something which triggered us, because we have this big layer in it, true crime storytelling. We have an unsolved case. We don't know who did it really. Officially it was the Red Army, but there are so many theories around it and so many things. At least there's a big question mark behind. But on the other hand, we're telling a story about Germany, about a divided Germany. And this was also in the beginning, in the pitch when we talked to the Americans in Los Angeles or in London to the people, saying, you think we are united here in Germany. We celebrated the peaceful unite, but we still know if somebody comes from the East or from the West. We feel that we still divided, and something happened wrong in this unification. And we think this case is at the core what happened wrong in the unification 30 years ago. So and this triggered us. Say, we want to tell this story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's also very, very interesting, and it's a very big USP of this series for me. I would say the combination of the true crime story and also the more sociological point of view of how the consequences of the reunification appeared in German society. And I wanted to know how difficult was it to combine these two levels of storytelling in the series? Could you maybe tell about this?
Good question. Good question. Because, of course, this was a still ongoing question all the time through the production, from the very beginning until the end, really the last day. With to find a kind of balance in this production between true crime storytelling, not being cheesy in it, not being like, and to tell history and to tell about politics and to tell something which is deeper in the soul of Germany. Public broadcaster system, what we have, what originally doing history and politics, and the platforms like Disney, Amazon, or Netflix, because they are entertainment platforms. And to find a way in between to find a combination of, we coming from the public broadcasters in the end, we worked a lot with public broadcasters around the globe. But then to work for a platform which is an entertainment platform was a task, I would say. Yeah. But it was also fun. So because we discussed it many times. For example, what's your audience? Is it a young audience? How educated they are? Do we talk to a German audience, or do we talk to an American audience, or to an Indian audience, or a South American audience? It's and to find a way that it's not too complex for everybody, and that they still can understand our characters, because who knows from the younger audience, for example, our Prime Minister Kohl? Nobody. We and this was also something what we had to integrate in our team all the time. That we had in our team also young people who put in question marks. Saying, I don't know who's this guy with this. I never heard about him. Weigel, for example. The Red Army Fraction. Oh, is this a band? Or what is that? So I never heard about the Red Army Fraction. Oh, you never heard about the Red? Yeah, never heard about. Okay, so we discovered a lot on this journey, to work with Netflix.
Because we said, okay, at the end of the day, we're talking about 1991. Yes, there are people losing jobs, and there's this violence and Nazis and everything. But on the other hand, Berlin is exploding on a creative level. You have the Love Parade.
Techno music, the clubs.
Techno, there are some incredible stories.
Day and night mixing completely. People from abroad, from East Germany, from West, from everywhere. Mixing in this Berlin, this sexy Berlin.
This creative, this freedom, and we had the story of a factory that was shut down, and 2 weeks later, people would enter there illegally and start a techno club. So basically, this turning point is also a cultural turning point, with squatters coming from all, everywhere. There were even people, some Nazis, neo-Nazis living in squatted houses. It was police was gone and it was free. And we also at the beginning, we wanted to give this context of saying, oh yeah, but it's still, it's the rhythm of the whole thing is techno and it's there. But we had to learn first editing parts that this is too much. It's already difficult enough to balance crime and politics. Give a little bit of context with archives here and there. Flake from Rammstein is in the program as well. It gives a moment of saying, yeah, there was also an idea for a different lifestyle. That's a small notion in the series, but we had to shorten that, although we had some really cool stories. So it was necessary to take a decision saying this is the dark side of German reunification. So it's a dark story, and you cannot have too much of this kind of happy energy in there as well, because it was a very tense period when you talk to people back then. And one of editors, Andres, East German, he said, in 1991, if you are alone outside in the evening, you're scared because you might meet Nazi somewhere. There's such a violent, aggressive time as well. So this was the tone and the color of the series.
Yeah, and to dive deeper into the soul of Germany, because the German soul is very complex, and with this structure, we going into different perspectives. So we have a Western perspective in it. We have an Eastern perspective in it. We have a perspective from above, but also from below. And in terms of storytelling, this is the great thing with this series, that you have time. You could tell stories much more complex, as if you would have only an hour for this story. So and as Georg was saying, also how you see Roberta. If you ask 4 people, you will get 4 different answers. If they come out from the Western, elite politics system, or if they come from the East, or if they are young or older, you always get a different picture, and all of these pictures are true and very interesting to follow. So, and this was the reason that we choose to go into different perspectives and to show different pictures of Roberta.
I think one of the big discussions when you do such a series is also deciding on the episode titles. So one is Martyr. This is something that, from a Western perspective, is one of the heroes of the reunification. From a very left radical point of view, he's a capitalist. Episode 2. Episode 3, he is Besatzer, I don't know the English word right now, but the occupier. It felt like, an alien force is coming and is occupying us if you were, honest or dishonest East German citizen. And in episode 4, you see that he was just basically at the end of the day, he ended up in this very, very complicated position as head of the Treuhand, and everything around him got crazy, and he's the victim because which is a very tragic story. And at the end of the day, so deciding on the titles was also a very important step to make clear we are telling different parts of the story, and all of them are true to a certain extent, and it's on the audience position now to decide which one or which part of which theory they want to reassemble and to put together.
Yeah, I wanted to focus on the pre-production process, on the research part of the process, because I guess it took quite some time to go through all the archives and find the right material. And above all, you found one protagonist in the series, and he's called Mr. X. How was it to work in such fields where Secret Service agents are around, and how was it to work in these delicate fields?
So we said, okay, we're not reenacting Mr. Roberta, so we have to construct the main character of the series, of a 4-part series with different phases, only through archives. Is this even possible?
Mm-hmm. How much material we could find?
What can we find?
We're really afraid.
How can we do it? This was like for us, let's say, also a moment to say, okay, if we don't find the archives, we have to find a different way. So we started from the very beginning to scan all the archives. I remember we had then something like 12 or 15 hours in a row materials, and after already a month of research of a colleague of ours, Janne. And we screened it, and we are very happy to find 2 interviews who have almost not been shown before, 40-45 minute interviews. And so we had this feeling of saying, okay, it's possible to have him just told through archives in different ways. So this was a very important step in the pre-production. Big relief. Then the second thing, of course, who's going to appear in front of the camera. We started with the family because, of course, when we started the program, Roberta's wife Hergard was still alive. She hasn't appeared in front of a camera for 25 years. So very sensitive and carefully, we managed to get in touch with her, and unfortunately, she died short before our interview was already scheduled. We were supposed to schedule an interview date. So this was a major issue. And this changed, of course, the nature of the series as well. So this was, you see how fragile. That's the moment where you dream of having a fiction series, you just write, what you want to see, and here we have to deal with reality. People die. So this was one thing, and in this series, if we have people from former terrorists, and people from from Secret Service, Western Stasi people. We have people from the toy hunt, so, and all these people, and now they reveal
traumatized family members. Also, I remember that we also tried to get them in the, I would say, show, in the series. But first of all, we have to build a good team, behind productions, not only us. So we started with all the archives, the research group, also to edit the archives, and then to collect interviews, who you could get.
So we had a team of researchers, because you cannot call a former Secret Service person saying, "Oh, you never been in front of camera. You want to share some of your thoughts with us?" No.
And the same with the Red Army fraction. Of course, we met people, we persuaded them, we showed them films of us. We discussed it. Some of them, were saying, "Okay, from the Red Army fraction, okay, for the very first time in my life, I would do an interview." But when we came with the camera, they disappeared, They said, "Oh, I was thinking about, no, I can't do it." So fuck, okay. Yeah. So it's something you have to collect, you like a fisherman in this kind of productions, where you try get that many fish and pieces on the table, and then to start to put them together.
And I think in terms of production, so we decided early on that some of the key interviews that would be, let's say, the bone of the series, we shot them very early on. And then we started the writing process, because, you need a cliffhanger. So if you talk to somebody, like I always, for me, one of the favorite moments is the cliffhanger of episode 2, when the new character comes in and says, das Abenteuer des Nachdenkens, so the adventure of thinking, then you might come to a different conclusion in a very smart way. And you meet somebody after a month, you talk 2-3 times, but you don't know what you'll have on camera at the end of the day. So we decided early on to shoot 4-5 interviews, key interviews. And with this material in place, we could already start to build the structure of the film, and we would know better what else we need. So we also answering your questions, we didn't have this classical situation of research, pre-production, production, post-production. In a way, we did everything in parallel to a certain extent. Soon after the research, we started editing the archives. We did first interviews. We went back to research, to write more interviews, started editing in parallel, shooting other interviews. So as we had to deal with this complex situation, we did everything in parallel, which made totally sense for this project. And you always, that's what some of the things that you arrange, as Christian said, 6 months of trying, and then somebody not appearing to the interview, another interview that maybe it's not even that important. Something interesting happens. So you have always some losses and some real gains. And the interesting thing is sometimes you only realize it during the editing. That maybe the interview with Silke Meyer-Witt, one of the former RF terrorists. It's a very silent interview. Very silent, very very condensed. And during the interview, the director Jan Peter always said it's a good interview, but you could only see it combined with the other materials. It's, that's super cool. So it's this back and forth, and it's basically you have to be very fleißig. You have to work hard, and then sometimes always happens. It's something like you're stubborn, and you go on, and a lot of things don't work out, and then you have some magic presents falling from heaven, and then you put it together. But that's, I think, the challenge and the fun of when you work with reality.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like a really challenging process, like for most of us for working in this parallel structures. I wanted to know, as one of my last questions, how was it to work for Netflix, especially in comparison maybe to a public broadcaster that you mostly worked for? how was the process different this time for the series?
Always that they're telling you, we will support your idea, whatever you want to do, and this was great. So we had completely the freedom in terms of storytelling and creative freedom, but also we had we were sure we have a team behind us, in Netflix.
And it's just for very practical things. For instance, one of our interview partners would not sign. Die Einverständnis erklären, so the
legal agreement,
the release for the interview. No, I'm not signing it because I want this material only to be used for this show and not for this and for that, and because I've never done an interview before. Then you go back and say he's not signing it, and then they find a solution. They start to change it, and then you go back and forth. So even with archives, because Netflix has very strict standards, technical standards. So and then if you have a problem with archives or something, you go there and say, what should we do with it? Is it good enough in Europe? And then you have always an expert talking to an expert about very specific problems. And the moment the project is done, it leaves the building, and it's Netflix production.
It's gone.
And